Welcome, everybody. I see about 10 attendees already jumped in. Give it 1 minute. And good morning, Paul. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started as everybody kind of jumps in. Can you guys just confirm that you can see my screen still? Okay, perfect. All right. So, hey, everyone, welcome. We're so glad that you're here today. We're going to dive into marketing and sales alignment, what happens when it's off, and what you can do to fix it. We'll share some real life examples, best practices, and then feel free to enter your questions into the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and we'll handle those at the end of the day. So I'm going to do a quick introduction to the panelists today, then kick it over to Tim, and he will take the discussion. So here's our great panelist or speakers today. First, we have Tim Jackson. So he's a senior consultant at Newberry Partners. Mo, she is the HubSpot Practice Leader, which is new to Newberry Partners. Lana Johnson, she's the CEO, CMO of Elevation Talent Group. And then Lori Blanford, she is the marketing advisor. So with that, I'm going to put you into very capable hands with Tim, and he will kick it off, and we'll get these conversations started.
Hey, thanks, Katie. Welcome, everybody. Our goal today is really to talk about why firms often don't manage sales lead generation and the process into sales lead management effectively, and what you might do about it, how to actually react to that. We'll share some best practices, help you advance up I'll call it maybe the marketing process maturity, and then get thinking about process automation. And Mo will be able to talk a lot about that, given her work with HubSpot. Let's start by thinking about, the key takeaway here is that when I get my team in place, I can then get my processes in place. And with processes, I get metrics, I get accountability, and then I can use cost-effective technology to make those processes better. That's our takeaway. And I'm going to dive right into this process by talking to Lori. We've had several practice sessions, and every time we talk about this stuff, it's like an improvisational, theater performance. We always have something new to say. So, Lori, Mo, Lana, dive in, do your thing. I'll try to keep us on track for time. Lori, let's start. In the context of all these technical terms around lead management and sales, lead gen, MQLs, SQLs, accountability for funnels. Talk about some good examples of good and bad processes here. What have you seen in the market, given your experience?
Yeah, I've worked with over 40 companies on their marketing programs and really have seen it from soup to nuts. And there are a lot of generalities. Of course, how this gets implemented is going to be specific to each company, but there certainly are common themes. The pillars that I see on this path from chaos to conversion are pretty standard. Starting with strategy, alignment, structure, metrics, and accountability. So first step is that strategy, and I would say that's really critical. Don't skip over this and make sure that everyone is a part of this part of the conversation. So this would be the executive team, the sales team, and the marketing team. And that first step is defining your target audience. So that's the ICP, or ideal customer profile. And once we have that finalized, then we can start to talk about the different processes and putting that structure in place. So the goal is alignment throughout this entire process. We've got marketing and sales working in partnership together under the leadership and strategic direction of the leadership team. So again, once we have that ICP in place, we're starting to talk about our processes. We're going to work with whatever historical data you have available. It might be something, it might be nothing, whatever's available. We're going to start to talk about metrics that we can build into the process. Again, this is collaborative, marketing and sales working together. We're going to strategize, and then we're going to operationalize these processes. So when we're talking about the difference between what marketing does and what sales does, marketing is really working to get the target audience to know, like, and trust our company. We're building awareness, we're building affinity, and we're developing that credibility as a trusted resource out there in the market. So there's a stat from the LinkedIn B2B Institute that I think is an important one to mention here. And that's of your target audience, only 5% of that audience is currently in the market to buy or in an active buying cycle. So marketing's really dealing with that entire audience, right? And building that relationship with them. So we're going to engage with all those potential buyers so that when they're ready to buy, our company is the one that's top of mind. And when a target gives us that signal or indicates that interest in buying, they become an MQL, which is a marketing qualified lead. So marketing then turns over that MQL to sales, and sales is going to convert that interest that they've demonstrated into action, and they become an SQL or a sales qualified lead. And then hopefully that translates to revenue. So again, strategy, alignment, structure, metrics, and accountability.
Lori, that was terrific. And I'm glad you called out those different stages. And I think it's important there that they are called out. And Lana, one of the things that you and I've talked about over the years is how much attention staffing firms devote to appropriately to the delivery side of our business, actually the recruiting processes, attracting candidates and moving them through the recruiting funnel, through the various presentations, all the effort we use to track metrics there. And I know we leave a lot of candidate leads behind in our process and aren't great at following up and doing even relationship work with candidates. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of structure in that recruiting funnel because it is actually where we end up with our placement. I often then look at a lot of staffing firms and they just don't apply the same disciplines to sales, and they don't have the same processes. They often don't have, I'll call it a mature system. So from your perspective, what are firms missing when they kind of don't pay attention to the themes that Lori just referred to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think on the recruiting side of our business, we tend to have processes because recruiting is very process driven. It's very, whether you're posting jobs, there's a process to screen people, there's a process to interview people, there's a process to check the backgrounds, credentials. It's very process driven. And sales is, we're trying to be a lot more proactive. We're trying, in recruiting, we're reacting to applications and what have you, but in sales, we're trying to create a relationship, from a seedling. And so I feel like, in sales, we're relying on a lot of activity. We're relying on, pursuing job openings that are out there, and there is very often less of a disciplined process around who are you calling on. Like Lori said, who's our ideal customer profile? Who are we calling on? Who are our targets? Who's giving us buying signals? Who's engaging with our emails, engaging in our content? I think it takes another level of sophistication to bring that all together to turn it into a sales and marketing machine that works.
Yeah, Lana, thank you. Just real quick, I want to go back to Lori. So Lori, why does this happen? Why do really smart leaders who run these firms that we all know they're terrific business people? Why is this? What do you think? You know, why do you think it happens that way? Why do we neglect those sales processes?
A lot of leaders and staffing firms are just more comfortable on the recruiting side. I think it's a bit more linear, and it's a bit less fluid than it is on the marketing and sales side. Certainly in marketing, we see a lot of technology coming into the equation. There are a lot of different tools out there. You know, it can be overwhelming to think about, I think, but it's really critical to growing the business. And we know that staffing traditionally has been such a relationship and sales driven business that a lot of the growth has depended upon, you know, those AEs or account managers and the relationships that they bring with them or that they're developing on their own. But the truth is, in this market and where we are today, marketing has to be part of the equation. There has to be a program in place in order to gain market share, right? There's a ton of opportunity for companies to gain market share by implementing a structured program.
Lori, that was that to me is sort of the headline of our whole discussion today. You know, the reluctance of sales leaders, even the CEOs to think about sales as a process versus the art of the deal and my relationships and just moving beyond those. Those are critical, you know, processes themselves. But like you said, to grow, especially in this market, we need process. We need a program. So Mo, it's a perfect segue. So you know, Lori and Lana, strategic thinkers, business leaders, you know, you've seen sort of the dark underbelly of some of these things. What are the challenges that firms face in terms of once they even get a sort of a process trying to make it happen from a technological standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, change fatigue is real, right? So when you have your teams going onto different systems and having to change the way that they do their job, and let's take sales for an example, right? I could be a top salesperson, but maybe I don't document all my meetings or my notes. How can our fellow
By the way, that's shocking.
how can my teammates learn from me though, right? Like I'm doing all these things right. How do you quantify like qualified data and the quality of the engagements and relationships you're having? So I would say lack of documentation there is something that we want to steer people away from. And when you have your process lined up, technology can really do great things for you, right? So structure, of course, is going to make this go a lot smoother. And the structure of a great process always includes what Lori mentioned, which is metrics, drives accountability. So, hey, it could be closing millions of dollars per quarter, but am I hitting my qualitative metrics of I'm having this many meaningful client interactions? You have to think about what activities drive those dollars. And I think technology really does a good job in highlighting and making salespeople appreciate marketing's efforts and marketing people appreciating sales efforts. You take your MQL to SQL funnel. That tells us a lot about the quality of our leads that marketing is bringing in and working so hard to qualify. You talk about SQL to opportunity. So that tells us a little bit about our prospecting cycle. And then you take opportunity to customer, that tells us about our sales cycle. So you can really break it down in terms of what am I highlighting at each step in the customer journey, and we can pinpoint where are we excelling as a company, where do we need to work as a company. And I would say keyword there is company, right? We can identify anomalies with singular team members, but we need to make improvements and process changes all together at the end of the day.
Well, I want to follow up on that. So you did a great job of lead gen, MQL, converting to a SQL, converting to the opportunity funnel, all those different stages of the process. And I could have those, articulate those in the sales training process, but you know, you've seen them get translated into a piece of technology or technologies, and with some good success, correct?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's all about bringing it into the context of the company that's using the software, right? Like we can give you very generalized terms, but the reality is like an SQL to my company might be slightly different than an SQL at your company. So it's really getting your process lined up and painting a picture behind it, as Lana and Lori have been saying to us. And then you let the technology do what it can do as long as you give it the instructions. So I've seen people do it a few different ways where I have my process, now I'm going to implement, or hey, I'm going to implement what I can because we don't have the resources to make our process. Let's let the technology kind of steer our process and show us some of those insights.
So Lana, just come, when if you heard Mo talking at an industry event and heard that comment, what opportunities do staffing firms miss when they don't take advantage of the ideas that Mo was describing there?
Yeah, I think you're missing an opportunity to really accelerate your growth, I think. So when you are able to build when you're able to build a system that creates synergy between marketing efforts and sales seamlessly, I think that you're missing a chance to really build your business. And, so often, we all know in staffing that it is really hard to find really good salespeople. And so I believe that really effective marketing is just propping your salespeople up to succeed. And then likewise, every person who is a marketer, every marketer loves the satisfaction, the feeling that they've helped the business grow. So I feel like when you're able to get the synergy working between both, as a business owner, it can really create measurable results. But it's hard. And it's hard in that you need to build the process, build the structure, have the technology, but then you need to have organizational aspects wrapped around that in terms of alignment and accountability. The last thing we want is leads generated from marketing that sales isn't following up on. And then you have to have the accountability too of leaders to say to sales, why aren't you using the process? Or to say to marketing, it's not working, we're not generating enough, what can we tweak? So I feel like there's such opportunity, and I feel like you just need to have, again, the structure, the accountability, the leadership to really get everybody rowing in the same direction.
The hard work of making change happen is a theme that kind of permeates a lot of our conversation here. Lori, I love there was the story you told about, an organization that was basically the salespeople were jumping the lead process, and as soon as someone showed up in the database, they were scrambling and calling them all. Tell me, just share the culture behind that and how you tried to, bend them back to the kind of the right path.
Yeah, well, as marketers, we love the enthusiasm, right, of sales. And just going back to the point of the teams really working together as revenue growth drivers, and looking at that as the common goal, I think is important. And it's really exciting when marketing has leads, right? But patience is a virtue. We want to be sure that sales is reaching out to the right person, which is whom we're going to reach because we've identified that ICP and we have our process in place at the right time, right? We don't want it to be too soon. We want to make sure that we've identified those triggers or what those buying signals are so that we know what the right time is. And we get better at identifying that over time once we have data and we can recognize patterns, which is exactly what the technology allows us to do. But what's going to happen as the program builds and scales, there's going to be more activity. So it's going to be important for sales to focus on the activity that's going to generate the results that they're looking for, right? So that's more opportunities, that's more RFPs, that's more meetings. And they want to be spending their time on the right activities and reaching out to those leads or targets that aren't there yet is not the best use of their time. So it's really that relationship between marketing and sales, building that trust, working together to understand all of the kind of incoming data and information so that everything can be adjusted to work optimally for everyone. And it's never perfect. I just want to say that it's never perfect. It's always a work in progress, and it's a team effort for sure.
Yeah, and if I can tack on to what Lori said, that's a great example, Lori, of like why lead scoring is amazing. Like if it's like taking a cake out of the oven before it's ready, right? Like if you have a lead scoring methodology embedded into your sales and marketing, your lead management process, then everybody knows, okay, once the lead score gets to X, this is when we call, versus like jumping the gun, asking to get married when you're on the first date kind of thing. So that's where I think that, an example of the technology supporting what our process is going to be really helps salespeople understand where they're going to have the most success.
I want to dive real quickly. Mo, we didn't do any rehearsal for this question, but Lana raises lead scoring, and lead scoring is classically not something that a lot of staffing firms do. It's just, and there's a lot of reasons why, but, in your experience, in the using tools like HubSpot for selling services, can lead scoring really be implemented effectively?
Yeah, I think what lead scoring does in a tool like HubSpot, right, is it gives you insight not only into what makes a good prospect, right? So I think Lori was talking about my ICP. You look at it from that angle, and I think a tool like HubSpot or something that has lead scoring embedded into it adds another layer of, okay, this might be my target persona, but are they engaged with my content, the engagement factors? So tracking things like how many times are they opening my emails and what type of emails are they opening? What pages are they clicking on my website gives you that interest layer that if you're not using a piece of software, you might never know, right? So that kind of brings us full circle into I'm spending X amount of dollars on this marketing campaign. How much of it is realistically paying off from am I targeting the right people and are they interested? And then a step further, are those people turning into people or leads or prospects in my sales funnel? So I think we can look at it a full picture view, but yes, a tool like that gives you a complete insight into who's interacting with your content.
So I'm going to hang on to this lead scoring idea because to me, it sort of sets, if you have lead scoring, you're going to get a lot of metrics data. You're going to get a lot of experience data. You're going to get signals, if you would. I just want to, and maybe Lon and Laura, you guys could add in, but I want to first, Mo, is the idea of lead scoring, if I'm the marketing person, and of course, let's say I came from, a goods servicing firm where lead scoring was, element of the whole, consumer B2C model. In the B2B world, it seems to be so subtle. And is it practical? And is it a skill that I, as an experienced service marketer, B2B marketer, can I learn? Is it something that I can do? And does the tool, is it so complicated that I got to call support and get engineering to do something? Or can I figure it out? Is it possible for me to actually win in this game without hiring 3 more people? Because that'll never happen.
Totally. Yeah. And right, I'm biased. I come from HubSpot. I was there 6 years. So I love the technology. I was part of the support team when I first started out there. So I sing praises to their team and helping people along the way. But a tool like HubSpot is designed so that you can pick up and go. So it was originally designed for those small to medium-sized businesses. Hey, I don't have a marketing team of 10 people beneath me. I need to learn this on my own. So it's really about understanding the concept of what am I trying to accomplish with this tool, number one, and there's plenty of documentation. This webinar will hit on some of those things, right? And then number two, how do I make that work in the context of my goals, right? So what are my engagement goals? What is my target persona? You plug it in, you kind of watch the magic happen. And our rule of thumb, right, is when you're setting up a new system, let's give it time, a couple of months to find what data we see and then make adjustments and insights moving forward. So
perfect. So Lori or Alana, you guys, you can pick who wants to respond, but you just heard an experienced HubSpot pro, and she's in a presentation, and you're on the executive team, and you're listening to her pitch, and you're like, yeah, right. What's the skeptic? What should I be thinking about that? Because I'm the IT guy in the corner and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, like, yeah, let's do it, let's license that, let's go. So how should I be cautious about that? What's the leadership view on what Mo just described?
Lori, you want to take it first?
Yeah, I can kick it off. The leadership view, I think, having trust. There are so many best practices that are already in place for B2B, and even more specifically for staffing. And as Mo mentioned, most of the marketing automation tools have excellent documentation in place that make it, once you have the initial implementation completed, self-service to a good extent really is possible. And there are a lot of firms like Newberry Partners out there who can be your partner throughout, from the tool selection through implementation, through a continued program. And I would just advise not to feel overwhelmed by it. Plenty of companies have gone through this. You'll have great partners throughout the process, and the tool really works for you. There are so many opportunities to bring in automation, to automate a lot of the outreach and the activities. For example, if you're using HubSpot as a CRM, you can really plan for your whole day, through the scheduling tool and the automation and a lot of that outreach that you have planned, let's say for sales sequences, the tool can manage that for you. So there are so many possibilities that a tool, marketing automation tool like HubSpot, for example, can provide. It's just getting started. And like we said from the very beginning, you don't have to be at the place where you're even at the tool to get started in a program like this now. So really start thinking about your strategy and getting your processes in place. And then you can bring in a tool.
I love that,
And
Laura.
Lana,
Yeah.
so Lori gave us, kind of the endorsement of Mo. What's the skeptical thing? What should I be thinking about in terms of what can go wrong here? In terms of just embracing the technology as opposed to really maybe getting the people and the processes lined up?
Well, I think you to convince leadership or to allay any concerns that they might have about making an investment in a tool like a HubSpot, you have to create the business case for it. You have to be able to show how, a solid starts with a solid marketing strategy, and then the lead management strategy. You have to be able to show how serving up scored leads, they're warm leads, right? If we're giving these MQLs to our sales team and we're saying this person's at the top of our lead score range, they have opened this many blogs, they have clicked on these many things in our email newsletters, they have visited our website so many times. This is a very warm lead. This is somebody that already knows who my organization is. If we've personalized our marketing appropriately, they already know who the salesperson, they already know who I am. So when I'm reaching out to them, it's not a cold call. And if our technology is sophisticated enough, we know what they're interested in. We can see what they've clicked on. We can see what they've read. And so that could give us insight to the challenges they might be facing as a business. So as a strategic salesperson, I can start the conversation targeted to what they're most concerned about and what I can provide the most value on. So if I'm trying to talk to leadership and allay their concerns about this kind of investment, I would be showing it's going to improve our close ratio by X%. It's going to improve our, call to meeting percentage. It's going to, I can really show, the beauty of staffing is that everything is measurable. Everything that we do is measurable, and everything that we do, therefore, as a result, can be very data driven. So I feel like if you can make the business case, to your leadership, and then frankly, to your sales team too, to say, look, this is our process. This is how it's going to help you be more successful. And at the end of the day, this is how it's going to help you make more money. I think that is how you create buy-in, when you can draw a link between here's what we need to do and here's the difference it's going to make, and show the ROI, both as an organization and individually.
Yeah.
Mo, I'm going to get to you, but because I know you're like, I want to get in there. Lori, again, in one of our previous sessions, you had the 3-word, like that crawl, walk, run thing. As a framework to, because if I was at the table hearing Lana, I might just kind of put my head on my hand and go, man, our organization just has such a hard time executing on this stuff. Lori, what advice do you have for me?
Yeah, it's exactly right. You're right. crawl, walk, run, right? We can do this iteratively, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. We can start with a small pilot and then scale the program at a pace that's manageable for the team. So the way that I've seen it done in some cases, let's say it starts with enterprise sales, and just that team is rolling out a program like this, or it could be a vertical focus or a geographic focus, and we kind of work out all the kinks, right? We figure it out, we get it in place, and then we can do a broader rollout across the entire sales organization. And I've seen it work more quickly than a lot of companies think it might. And more often than not, the success of that pilot program drives interest from other teams. So they're anxious to get started because they see the successes that the pilot team is having, and just setting expectations, knowing that this is all a work in progress, right? We're taking in the data, we're analyzing it, we're making adjustments, and that is going to continue to happen. And that's one of the benefits of having a technology in place.
Great. So Mo, HubSpot, Salesforce, any of the kind of the enterprise, the really good, platforms that are out there, in the staffing business, we would suggest that marketing, a lot of people know about marketing, social media campaigns, especially on the recruiting side, we use all sorts of tools, programmatic advertising, all sorts of, I'll call them technically efficient processes. And frankly, the best ones are connected to my ATS, and those leads roll in. And I may not call 95% of them, but I do call the 5 that I want. I have a pretty good chance of putting those people to work. So at the end of the day, I feel good about the ROI on digital marketing. Hop over to the B2B sales side. The role of digital marketing, the role of these tools that Lana was describing, the campaigns, if you would, the idea of a campaign. Mo, how have you seen kind of a firm that's successful? They've got some digital marketing processes. They've got a CRM. Maybe they're just using I'll call it the native CRM inside Bullhorn, for example. But it's not getting them where they want to be. What's how does all this get connected?
Yeah, I would say context is key, right? Context is king, let's say. So I think Lana was saying, hey, I have, this warm lead handed off to me. Maybe they've scored a 70 and my MQL threshold is 65. Great. But what goes into that score? And I think that's where marketing comes into play. So how much of that is fit for my business? What role are they? What is the background of business? How many employees? And then how much of that is interest and engagement? And I think, again, when you're tracking marketing tools and you're using tools like HubSpot or Salesforce to track your campaigns, you're able to see, hey, my ideal customer is a little interested. My not so ideal customer is really interested. Where can I make assumptions to move forward one way or the other? A score is a score, right? But we need to see insight into that score. And again, I would echo context is key, and having a marketing platform that is able to provide those insights is so valuable. So, what media campaign contributed to this specific lead, which ended up closing at a really, fast close rate for our sales team and made us a lot of money. Is that a pattern or is that an anomaly? So being able to provide context behind what you're seeing and then being able to take away what is the norm for me and to be able to iterate off of that is so powerful.
Yeah, this idea of campaign management, of course, underlying all this is some ROI discussion, but the role of marketing and the marketing automation tools, and then the connectivity to my CRM, which then, of course, from a data perspective, I've got one, in theory, one source of truth, who my customers are, my
customer
contacts
journey
are. How's that stuff happen when because it's daunting to think about integrating something like Salesforce or HubSpot to my CRM and kind of not using my CRM that's the native CRM in Bullhorn.
Yeah,
Instead
totally.
using a more sophisticated tool. How do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. What we've seen most typically for our clients is, hey, I want my recruiting team living in Bullhorn and handling candidates and job orders, and I want my sales team living in something like HubSpot or Salesforce. So when we integrate the two systems, we can really have that alignment to map, hey, here are my job order stages until a placement's been made, to here's my sales pipeline in HubSpot. And those two systems talking to each other gives us that I'll say like ROI visibility, and using a tool like HubSpot for like campaign attribution can take it from the very beginning. So, hey, this person converted off my website, entered my CRM, they're a part of Bullhorn as a job order, and how long did it take them to get to a closed won customer, and how much money did that really make me? Depending on what system you prefer and use, right? Whether it be Salesforce or HubSpot, just having the visibility into that time of conversion to time to customer, that's where everything in the middle, Tim, that you're talking about comes into play. So what campaigns have they been a part of? How many salespeople have touched them, from a meeting standpoint, from a email standpoint, activities.
Yeah, I
So
would add to that too, that the
go ahead.
integration not only gives you that visibility into the net new sales process, it also helps you to realize revenue from opportunities like cross-sell or upsell opportunities. So do we have a temporary client that we've never done direct hire business with? We can easily segment out and start to build campaigns to target that business and grow the accounts. I see a lot of organizations really focusing on net new when there's a ton of unrealized revenue in their existing accounts that marketing automation in this integration between systems can help companies realize.
I
So go ahead, Lana.
I'll add on. You mentioned the word visibility, Mo, and I think that that's really key from two perspectives. Number one, team visibility. Like if everybody can see everything that's happening, I'll give you the simplest example. You know, if I'm a salesperson and I have highly engaged leads that I'm, you know, they're scoring high on our lead scoring scale, and I've got a lot of activity, I've got presentations going on with them. I don't want a recruiter trying to recruit out of that client. Like everybody needs to be on the same page in staffing with what's happening, you know, with regards to our top targets and our activity. And then the other aspect of visibility is visibility to ROI, being able to connect. I think a lot of staffing firms struggle with this, being able to connect their sales and marketing efforts to profitability and ROI. I think that you can't do it unless the systems are talking to each other. So that integration, I think, is really critical for that reason alone.
Yeah, I wanted to, it's not something we talked about previously, but we just talked about marketing and sales, marketing and CRM connecting to my ATS. That's a beautiful picture. But one of, you know, there is another layer above even the marketing automation, things like Zoom Info. This is not a commercial for Zoom Info, but the articulation of a technology stack that's fully integrated has to include these information sources that where those vendors charge an arm and a leg, but charge it nevertheless. They have the data and they have the ability to integrate it into something like HubSpot or Salesforce. So you don't have to do all that groundwork all the time. So I just the synergy that you get from top to bottom with that fully integrated stack to me is something that I think it's the kind of vision roadmap that it should inform the plans of a firm. I know we're racing through our schedule here, and I know we've got some questions, Katie, but I do want to just Mo, in terms of some of the topics that we've talked about here, what are your kind of key, I'll call it, just some of the metrics that you think are missed because we don't use some of these technologies, or if you try to calculate them without the technologies, it's a death march.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll hit on your earlier point of, hey, we have Zoom Info now, like things like that are becoming the norm, right? So my advice always, if we're starting out on a new endeavor of building a tech stack, is to build it in a way that hits, your CRM should hit 85, 90% of your goals in your use case, and you add on top of that. A lot of times what we see with folks is like, I was grandfathered, I came into this company and we have 5 different tools and 3 of them kind of do the same thing. Like, how do I find what I'm looking for? So when we think about metrics, I think it's really important to say, what boxes does Zoom Info do for us versus HubSpot? And of course, you need your ATS. So aligning and get a full picture view of your tech stack as it relates to your process, and then layering in things like we mentioned earlier. Really important to note, hey, what is my MQL to SQL conversion rate? So that tells me about the quality of my lead. And then from there, it's going to tell me a little bit of prospecting. So SQL, I'm nurturing, warming up that lead, and now I have an opportunity. That's a conversion rate to pay attention to. And then opportunity to close one deal. So how long is it taking me to close a deal? How often am I closing deals? So your pipeline velocity, average deal size, what are the size of my deals? And when you use a CRM that is designed to absorb a sale process and then give you X, Y, and Z, you're already set up 70% of the way. There's so much functionality that a tool like HubSpot or Salesforce has at its disposal when you buy it out of the box. A lot of pain points that we've seen with folks in the staffing industry, and I would say industry agnostic as well in my work from HubSpot, is this is so much, we don't know what we don't know. So my advice in terms of keeping your tech stack simple is also to keep your metrics and goals simple when you're starting out a new tech stack. So focus on, 1 to 6 key pieces of metrics that align marketing and sales, and see where we can get, and then we can layer on complexities after that.
Terrific, Mo. Lana, before I know we're going to jump to a couple of questions, but any final comments you want to wrap for our team in terms of what their takeaways from today's conversation might be?
My wrap up would be that sales is hard, and sales and staffing is really hard right now. I'm doing it. I am the person doing it for my business, and it's tough out there. And so I think that being able to take a more sophisticated approach to help a salesperson or a sales team prioritize who they should call on, be able to make more effective outreach, be able to improve their ability to close new business. I think that, there's so much opportunity when you have a strong machine between sales and marketing. And again, that synergy and that alignment, there's incredible opportunity to create, again, greater success. That's my theme. And to me, again, that's that sophistication that helps you build better relationships. Sales and staffing, companies build their businesses in staffing based upon relationships, really good, deep relationships with clients. And I feel like the sophistication of the tools that are on the market right now to help us do that are stronger than ever. And so it's definitely something that any company, any staffing firm who is wanting to grow needs to consider their approach to this area.
Hey, Lori, how about you? What would your kind of parting takeaway be?
Oh, Lana, that was chef's kiss.
It was good.
I would just reiterate the strategy, alignment, and partnership aspects. I think that those are critical in building a program. And a particular note around the partnership, which we haven't talked about yet, I think, is identifying champions within the teams so that you're really bringing people along from the very beginning. And that's a good way to get better buy-in and see better success in a program like this. Because again, we don't want it to be just another task, right? Like administrative task that the sales team has to do. We want to make sure that there's actual delivered value to them in this type of program and all the steps that we're asking them to take. And it's important in the beginning for leadership to really articulate what that value is and what the expectations and the outcomes are for implementing something like this, and then having the teams work together throughout the process.
Terrific, Lori. And I first of all, I want to thank everybody. We'll take a few minutes of questions here. Katie, thank you for organizing our work here. Mo, Lana, Lori, terrific job. It's really, there's just a lot. This is such an opportunity, in my view, for our staffing firm clients to elevate their game. If you think back to years ago, how we approached discovering candidates, and there's a process. And one thing that the word VMS never came up here, but when Lana was talking, it reminded me that we often hear, oh, those VMS systems, I can't, I can't deal with that. There's no relationship. They've taken the people out of the business. And of course, that's absolutely wrong. The problem is you're not connected to the right people in those organizations. And that, to me, that's where tools like this give us a chance to understand the organization that we're selling into. And yeah, our delivery team is going to integrate with their VMS, but you still need these relationships. You still need to have a conversation about what those jobs are that are flowing from that demand system that we see as VMS. It's just so critical to not give up on this relationship thing, because the business will wither and die if you don't have those relationships. So thank you, Lana, for that cue. It was terrific. Katie, anything we can bite off on the questions here in the time remaining?
All right. We have quite a few. We'll see how many we can get through. The first one, if leaders want results and leads now in a new region, but we need to run campaigns to understand the interest that exists in the new region audience, what can a marketer do in a situation like this? Staffing firm, one marketing person using HubSpot.
I'll take that one. Okay. Okay, so we need to understand. Okay, my first question to you would be, aside from HubSpot, are we leveraging anything else like a ZoomInfo, right, to give us the answers to some of those questions? I would say, and I'm not sure how new you are to HubSpot or if this is a in theory question, but I will say HubSpot has its own sort of insights tool using AI, a little bit newer, right? It's sort of working its way up to be a ZoomInfo competitor, I would say, in the next couple of years. So number one, how do we get that information if not from your own knowledge or data? And then the reality is, in a system like HubSpot or Salesforce, it's just a matter of putting an automation behind it to then segment. So if we have an idea of where we're getting the data and what we want to do with it, the rest is really just a click of a couple buttons. So those would be my leading questions to you, and happy to knock around other ideas if you'd like to offline.
What's next, Katie?
All right. What approach do you take to determine a lead scoring system, and what is an example of what it looks like?
Another one for me. I'll take it, and then maybe Lana and Lori, if you want to echo in some thoughts from your own perspectives. But I think I'll just echo what I mentioned earlier from an example purpose, because I think this question came in and then we started talking about it a bit more. So best practice from HubSpot's point of view, right? And I would say Salesforce as well, is focusing on fit score and engagement score and figuring out what a good merriment between those two are. So Lana and Lori, maybe this is where you guys can chime in terms of, Lana, like, do I want to see more of an engagement score on the sales end, or am I really worried about, are they the best fit and then I'll win them over? I think, context is king behind all of those scores are going to be a little bit of a customer journey. So if I'm a sales rep and I see a good score, I want to know what's causing or driving that score, so then I can decide how I want to handle the sale. So I'll hand it to you, Lana, if you want to add more color to that.
Yeah, I think you touched on my favorite answer to most questions is it depends. So I think what's really important is that as you are designing campaigns, that you are intentional about what do you want the customer to do. So maybe you're entering a new market. Maybe you want to emphasize the direct hire services in your business more. So I think you have to decide what your goal is, and then you have to design the campaign to achieve that goal. And so what I mean by design that campaign is, what content are you creating? What is your strategy at the top of the funnel? How are you moving them down the funnel? So you have to design a campaign to be aligned to the goal that you want to achieve. And therefore, as part of the campaign is, what is your lead scoring? So you can score leads based upon a lot of different, criteria. And I think that it can, what you're scoring on can depend upon the outcome that you're trying to achieve.
So Lana, that was terrific. Mo, great point. Actually, I think of lead scoring sometimes one-dimensionally, but it really has many drivers of it. Lori, if I'm a staffing firm, and most of our industry is kind of industry niche driven, skill based. We do IT, we do financial accounting, we do marketing, we HR people, we do light industrial, but so many of the firms that we work with are extending their offerings because to the points earlier, we have a relationship with this customer. I want to do more business with them. I want to deepen. So are the tools that Mo can bring to place, are they useful in that whole broadening my existing account base, my existing business with my current accounts?
Absolutely. Not only useful, but I'd say critical. And the first step is really getting the data into the system. So I really encourage companies as part of establishing these processes to make sure that they're segmenting the data as much as possible so we can have more personalized outreach and really focus on, Tim, to your example, some sort of cross-selling campaign. So is the customer in the database? Do we have all the different service lines that they're currently using? And is that data accurate and up to date? Where are they located geographically? What's their industry? You know, the more data that we have, the better we can communicate with them with that more personalized outreach.
Lori, thank you. You know, and Katie, that might be the place to kind of wrap up. But you know, Lori's emphasis on, you know, this is a science. There's a process to it, and it's not all bits and bytes, but you need to pay attention to the data, and you need to use your insights into the business and your insights into your team to get the best data and use it, and then recycle it, rinse and repeat. You know, that whole crawl, walk, run. I mean, to me, the discipline around that is essential. So, Katie, anything else we should jump out before we call it a day?
There's quite a few questions, and we can follow up with those directly
Okay.
after. We'll share it with the team. So
Thank you, everybody. And Katie, we're going to share the deck later on, maybe with people.
yep, we'll share the deck and the recording
All right, cool.
afterwards, and yeah, that
And
should
of
come
course,
later today.
reach out to any of us. You can tell all of us are always excited to talk about this stuff. And in particular, I think, you know, Mo's perspective coming from HubSpot, now working with the top bullhorn integrator, you know, she definitely is her eyes are opening up as to what the potentials are. We are not ever limited to what the delivered integrations are with Bullhorn and HubSpot. You know, Lori's back, Mo's backed by a team of technicians that can use those APIs very effectively, both in HubSpot as well as Bullhorn and frankly, ZoomInfo. So it's kind of exciting. So thank you, everybody. Katie, any final words? No.
We're
All
all
right.
set. Thank you, everybody,
Thank you,
for
everybody.
attending, and we'll follow up with you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Have a good
everyone.
day.
Good day. Bye-bye.